the way I like to think of this is basically lower the bar. Whenever I feel like I'm procrastinating or feeling too perfectionist about something, I remind myself I have to lower the bar. And this sounds bad. It sounds like, oh my God, you're embracing mediocrity. It's like, yes, I am embracing mediocrity, because otherwise I would allow perfect to be the enemy of good. Perfectionism and procrastination will then hold me back. Now, there's two main reasons why you should lower the bar and just set reasonable standards rather than high standards. The first one is that if you don't set your standards too high to begin with, then it's a lot easier to start. Now, when it comes to procrastination, as I've written about in my book and talked about ad nauseum, by the way, you should check out my book if you haven't already, link down below. And if you have, please leave an Amazon review, lol. Anyway, we know from all this stuff that like getting started with things is often the hardest part. Procrastination is a problem with getting started rather than a problem with doing the thing once you've gotten started. And perfectionism often leads to procrastination because perfectionists are so afraid of failure and would much prefer to avoid failing, and so they don't even start in the first place. Therefore, what we do is we lower our standards, we lower the bar, and that lets us simply start somewhere. And reason number two for lowering your standards is that if you set reasonable standards rather than very high standards, you will also lower the risk of burnout. And so really the way we do this is that for whatever we're working on, we try and establish the standard of good enough. Like, what does good enough mean to you in this specific case? And then once you've met your expectations of the task and you have satisfied your level of good enough, then you can stop and move on to something else. Now, it is okay sometimes to set your expectations a little higher and to enter the zone of diminishing returns, because sometimes you do want to challenge yourself and go above and beyond what's expected of you. But it's important to remember that A, we can't do this with everything, so we shouldn't try because that's a recipe for burnout. And B, especially if you're new to something or you have a tendency to procrastinate on the thing, high standards are actually holding you back rather than serving you in that context. By the way, one of my favorite things to do to overcome these sorts of negative feelings that lead to things like procrastination and perfectionism is journaling.